We've been covering this for a couple days now. Both sides and the people of the state of New York versus Donald Trump have 7 months before they are due back in court again. So Trump's legal team will be busy now filing motions against the 34 felony charges stemming from payments made during the 2016 presidential campaign.
So Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg explained how Trump's team would pay to keep negative stories out of the press during that time in what's called a catch and kill scheme.
As part of this scheme, Donald Trump and others made 3 payments to people who claimed to have negative information about Mr. Trump. To make these payments, they set up shell companies, and they made yet more false statements.
All right, so that was Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg there. The judge in the case did not issue a gag order. We talked a lot about this, which could change following Trump's speech last night at Mar-a-Lago. Take a listen.
The criminal is the district attorney because he illegally leaked massive amounts of grand jury information for which he should be prosecuted, or at a minimum, he should resign.
So, of course, there is a lot of legal ground to cover here. So we invited former prosecutor Marie Pereira to join us again this morning to break it all down for us. So first, good morning to you, Marie. Thanks again for being with us.
Good morning.
So since we just played this soundbite of former President Trump speaking about the judge, again, he didn't issue a gag order yesterday, the judge. And then just a few hours later, you hear of former President Trump speaking about the judge and his family. So could the judge change his mind about that gag order now? After what?
The judge is the master of his courtroom, and yes, indeed, he could change the gag order if he feels that Mr. Trump is talking too much, saying too much, being disrespectful, or even inciting any type of violence. In this case, yes, he can change his mind and put a gag order, even a limited gag order, on everyone involved in this litigation.
All right, so that's very interesting information there. But let's talk about what we saw kind of play out yesterday, Marie, right? With these 34 felony charges, there was a lot of talk and a lot of back and forth about whether or not there was going to be misdemeanors and felonies. It was 34 felony charges. What exactly does all of that mean? And give us a brief explanation of these charges.
Well, initially, the charges are misdemeanors, but they elevated to being felonies because they're alleging, Alvin Bragg is alleging that Donald Trump committed these misdemeanors in an effort to conceal another deeper crime. And that crime, he's saying, is election fraud, interference with voters' decisions, and trying to hide things to impact his ability to become president, which he ultimately became president, so it worked. He intentionally defrauded the public into not knowing about him and his issues with people who had bad news against him.
Yeah, so the prosecutors, they revealed a little bit of their legal strategy yesterday. Some critics were calling it creative prosecuting, but it all centered around David Pecker and this catch and kill scheme. So how strong do you feel their case is? And what are the chances that some of these charges would be thrown out?
I think the case is not so strong because it's a little bit convoluted, and it is treading on ground that hasn't been tested before. Basically, they're trying to say that he intended to defraud the public by keeping the information from the ears of the voters. And that is tantamount to election fraud. And that made the falsification of the documents be raised to a level of being felony. They have to really show that he intended to do that, and I think it's a stretch. The nexus between his intent and the actual misdemeanor crime, which was elevated to a felony, is very, very, very weak, in my opinion.
Yeah, and of course, there's so much legal analysis, right? If the DA, Alvin Bragg here, had enough evidence to move forward, many saying that he wouldn't have moved forward if he didn't feel he had sufficient evidence here. But let's talk about what exactly plays out next, right? The charges are all laid out. The former president's back in Florida, and the judge sets this court date now of December 4th, which seems like a very long time from now. Is that timeline the usual amount of time between when an indictment is unsealed to when the next court date is?
It is a longer timeline, but this is not a typical case. We're talking about a very complex case involving new territory, lots of allegations. And like it said in the statement of facts, you know, the narrative is very, very new to legal minds and territory, and they're giving all the parties time to prepare, because I'm sure there are going to be motions to dismiss based on various grounds. And given the nature of all the parties involved, they really need more time for this case.
Well, let's just review just some of the words you just said. Complex, new territory, confusing. Now, if this does in fact go to trial, if even legal experts are a little confused because this is really new territory, what are the chances that an average everyday juror is going to be able to understand the charges in this case?
That's my concern. It's very difficult because when you think about what they're alleging, okay, Trump was running for president and he knew that he had a lot of dirt in his background, to simply put it. So he tried to shut down the potential haters, and he tried to do that so that the voters would not dislike him and think he was not fit for the role of being president. So what did he do? He paid off people, and he had lawyers do agreements to say you're not going to talk, non-disclosure agreements. That's not illegal. Now, to the average person, it doesn't sound like a crime. That's what I'm concerned about. It doesn't sound like interference with election laws. It just sounds like someone who's strategizing to win an election and just shut down the haters. I don't see where it's going to be really hard to convince the jurors that he, in fact, intentionally broke election laws because he tried to shut down haters, simply put.
All right, we'll see how all of this plays out. You know, luckily we have folks like you and other legal experts that will help break it down and make this more palatable for everybody to understand as we move forward in this uncharted territory. But former prosecutor Marie Pereira, always good to talk to you. Thank you.